Teaching imitation, mimetic behavior, autism training solutions. It is difficult to overstate the important role that imitation plays in learning and development. Imitation is perhaps the most fundamental means of acquiring new behaviors and knowledge for humans. Imitation refers to the emission of a behavior that is topographically similar and temporally proximal to the behavior of a model. In other words, imitation means to mimic another person's behavior. Infants and children absorb vast amounts of information through the imitation of others. Imitative learning allows children to observe, then practice and rehearse the behaviors they've seen, and leads to the mastery of countless new skills. Once a generalized imitation repertoire is established, the learner has acquired a response class of doing as the model does. These imitation skills play a powerful role in behavioral development of children. The emergence of language, social, daily living, and play skills are often products of generalized imitation. In typically developing infants and children, imitation skills emerge early in development and occur naturally, such as a child imitating their mother clapping during patty cake. This imitative learning is instinctive and effortless and provides them with an easy means for acquiring new skills and knowledge. Most children with autism spectrum disorders, however, have what has been called a core deficit in the ability to imitate. They often show little interest in the behaviors of those around them and do not often attempt to imitate what they see. Poor imitation skills indicate that the child with ASD is not observing and learning from the world around him. Failure to imitate means that new skills are not practiced, rehearsed, or mastered.
Do this. Do this.
For typically developing children, imitative learning happens naturally through observation and imitation of the behaviors of others. But for children with ASD, these behaviors often require direct teaching. Teaching imitation skills is an extremely important focus of early intervention and provides the foundation for more advanced learning.
Do this.
Also, once a child learns to do as the model does, model prompts can be incorporated into the other instructional programs.
Do this.
The instruction of an imitation repertoire requires that skills are broken down into its most basic components, then taught and reinforced. Then the skills can be expanded by increasing the responses with more difficulty and complexity. The end goal is to generalize imitation skills so students are able to copy the behaviors of others, especially peers, and continue to imitate behaviors in the absence of direct instruction and continuous reinforcement. Our aim in teaching foundational imitation skills is for imitative learning to become a natural way for the child with ASD to learn new behaviors and skills.
The end goal is to generalize imitation skills so that students are able to copy the behaviors of all of the above. Another end goal of imitation training is for the learner to continue to imitate behaviors in the absence of direct instruction and continuous reinforcement.
When teaching imitation, there are two topographies of imitative behavior that should be targeted: motor imitation and verbal imitation. Motor imitation, also referred to by Skinner as a mimetic, includes four components: toy object imitation, also called object manipulation, gross motor imitation, fine motor and oral motor imitation. Motor imitation involves mimicking the movements of a model. Verbal imitation, also known as an echoic, involves mimicking the vocalizations of a model. Historically, many ABA programs recommended teaching motor imitation first before moving on to verbal imitation. More recently, researchers suggest that the two forms of imitation can be taught simultaneously. This training will cover motor imitation. Motor imitation involves copying the physical movements of another person or a model. The antecedent is a stimulus involving motor movement by a model. The desired response is nonverbal and mimics the movements of the model. The consequence is reinforcement of the imitative behavior. Let's watch a simple example of gross motor imitation. Here, the instructor is teaching Kiana to copy her movements as she claps her hands.
Copy me. Wait. What's your name?
Kiana.
Good job. Give me frog.
As the SD, the instructor says, "Copy me," as she claps her own hands. In response, Kiana claps her hands. The instructor then provides praise as a reinforcer after a few more responses. Here's another example of imitation training. This example illustrates toy or object imitation. The instructor is teaching AJ to copy her movements as she uses a toy car. As the SD, the instructor says, "Do this," and provides a model of the rolling action with the object, the car. In response, AJ copies her movements with the car. He has provided praise as a reinforcer.
Do this.
Notice that the SD, "do this" or "copy me," is not specific to the motion being performed. That is, it does not label or specify the action being mimicked. This is a very important part of imitation training. We use this non-specific SD to ensure that we are targeting imitative skills and not receptive or listener response skills.
Oh, this one. Good. And this.
Do this. Do this.
If we were to instead deliver the SD, "clap hands," we would be providing a vocal prompt that specifies the motion we want the student to perform. By using the non-specific "do this," we can be sure that imitative skills are truly being targeted.
True or false? Motor imitation and verbal imitation can be taught simultaneously. True. The antecedent of imitation is the SD "do this," the reinforcement of imitative behavior, a stimulus involving motor movements by a model, or the person mimicking the motor movements of the model. So the antecedent of the imitation. It would be the stimulus involving motor movements. Great.
Within motor imitation, there are 4 skill areas to teach: toy or object imitation, gross motor imitation, fine motor imitation, and oral motor imitation. Let's look at toy or object imitation in more detail. Toy or object imitation is a useful method for teaching play skills. This is a good place to start teaching imitation because imitation involving the manipulation of a physical object usually produces discrete sensory feedback, such as dropping a block into a bucket or shaking maracas. This is often enjoyable to the student and thus easier to learn. In the early phases of a toy or object imitation, it is best to start with toys or play items that the student has shown interest in. Begin with 2 identical sets of toys, so that teacher and student each have a set. The teacher should instruct the student to "do this" while performing an action with the toy.
Do this. Do this. Good for you. She's jumping. Baby jumping. Look. Night night.
The student, in response, should imitate the action. Some suggested targets could be roll car, bang drum, stack block, toot horn, shake maraca, etc.
Surprise!
As students become more proficient at toy or object imitation, the complexity of targets can be increased. It's important to remember that multiple actions can be taught for the same toy. By teaching Marissa that she can use the baby to sleep, eat, give kisses, and jump, we are expanding play skills at the same time that we address imitative skills. Likewise, varying the target imitative skill forces the student to really attend to the SD.
Right. Do this. Crash. Wow, good crash.
If we only teach AJ to imitate rolling the truck back and forth, he will likely associate the truck only with rolling. However, if we teach AJ to imitate rolling and crashing the car, his imitative skills will be better exercised, and he will have learned multiple uses for the same play object. Gross motor imitation involves body movements that can be mimicked. No materials are necessary. Again, the SD should always be nonspecific, such as copy me, to ensure that imitative skills are being targeted. Some common beginning level gross motor targets are clap hands, touch nose, touch head, arms up, stomp feet, pat tummy. It can be useful to choose targets that are being addressed in other program areas, such as listening or responding, receptive body parts, or following instructions. This overlapping can make transfer of skills more natural and smooth. More advanced gross motor imitation skills might include responses that require the student to move to a different location, away from the immediate work area, or responses that require the student to discriminate between similar targets. Teachers can expand the motor skills by chaining them together. Teaching 2 or 3 actions together works on increasing attention and working memory.
In the early phases of a toy or object imitation, it is best to start with novel materials that the child has not been exposed to, objects that evoke problem behavior of the learner, toys that the student has shown interest in, or musical instruments, because all children with autism enjoy music. So probably toys that the child has shown interest in, and then the SD for both gross motor and toy imitation should be non-specific. Perfect. Great job. So non-specific means like copy me or do this to ensure that the imitative skill is followed.
Fine motor imitation involves more detailed and precise movements, targeting fine motor skills. It may or may not use materials. The SD for these targets should be non-specific, such as do this or do what I'm doing, and activities that target play skills and instructions from other programs can be used to maximize transfer of skills. Some common beginning level fine motor targets could include pointing, giving thumbs up, squeezing Play-Doh, and pressing buttons. It is also useful to choose targets that are part of other programs, such as those that include body parts, or actions with toys such as spinning a top, opening a bag, winding up a toy. Other targets can include important actions in self-help skills, such as buttoning, turning knobs, screwing lids on and off, etc. Oral motor imitation involves movements of the mouth, tongue, lips, face, and head. Oral motor imitation is often used as a prerequisite to verbal imitation and speech programs for non-vocal learners. These activities help practice the motor movements needed for better articulation, increasing vocalizations, strengthening oral motor musculature, and providing the basis for vocal speech. Successful oral motor imitation provides students with powerful reinforcement for pre-speech behaviors and can help build momentum in the progression towards speaking. Again, the SD is non-specific and can be do this, copy me, etc.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Maybe you want something else. Which one?
And salty. Yes.
Good
There
job,
you go.
Some common beginning oral motor exercises include opening mouth, smiling, sticking out tongue, blowing kisses, puffing up cheeks, raspberries, and blowing.
Focus. Good job. Do this. Do this. Awesome.
The 4 areas of motor imitation are toy or object imitation, gross motor imitation, fine motor imitation, and oral motor imitation. All address imitative skills in different ways. Toy or object imitation assists in the development of early play skills. Gross motor and fine motor imitation assist in the development of motor skills, play skills, and self-help skills. Oral motor imitation assists in the development of echoic, imitation, and speech.
of imitation generally assists in the development of verbal imitation in speech. Oral motor. The following are common beginning targets of what kind of imitation? Pointing, giving thumbs up, squeezing Play-Doh, and pressing buttons. Fine motor. Yep. You got it.
For a student to be able to begin imitation training, they need to be able to, number 1, stay seated or be able to sit for a short period of time. 2, they need to be able to attend to the teacher. 3, the student should be able to keep hands off of materials. 4, when prompted to look at this, the student should be able to scan the materials and track the teacher's finger and look at the object. When you begin, probe or test the student's motor abilities and identify behaviors that may be more likely to get success, such as gross motor skills.
Good. Do this. Do this one.
Motor skills are the easiest to prompt, such as clapping hands, tapping table, touching eyes, nose, mouth, etc. Present the model and immediately deliver a physical prompt to the student.
Do this.
Gradually fade your guidance until the student is able to initiate and complete the movement without assistance.
Good job. Have a seat. That's having a seat. Ready? Do this. Good job, Ortez.
Reinforce all approximations.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off!
To make sure the child is able to discriminate the new behavior, mix up the actions with other mastered actions. This will indicate whether the student has mastered this skill. Continue to increase the imitation repertoire as the child starts to discriminate actions.
Ready? Show me what you can do. Do this.
Because of the foundational nature of imitative skills, imitation is often used as one of the first steps in teaching. Through transfer procedures, behaviors and information taught through imitation can be built on and expanded. As with all learning in ABA programs, imitation skills training involves a systematic progression from simple to more complex tasks. Individuals will benefit most from direct teaching of few imitative tasks at a time.
Good, she's sleeping.
Targets should be chosen carefully and based on the skill level of the student. This can be determined through assessments such as the VB map. As imitative skills grow, more advanced work on imitation can occur. Advanced imitation might include multiple steps: natural environment imitation, imitation of another person, imitation of more complex actions, and imitation of peers. It is important to remember throughout imitative skills training that the end goal is to have the student able to imitate others in his natural environment. Imitation and the imitation of peers are crucial to success in everyday functioning at home, at school, and in the social environment.